Something that a lot of video game developers struggle with is setting the difficulty of a game. Now if you're like me, then you'll probably just pick the normal difficulty option if provided and adjust it later on if needed. Some people enjoy a more casual experience and others prefer something more demanding, but in a lot of instances, some video games won't actually give an option to change the difficulty. And whilst most people would play the game as it is, some choose to intentionally make the game harder by playing it a certain way. This has helped spawn many fan-made video game challenges, and today I'll be counting down my personal top 5 favourite ones. To clarify, I won't be ranking them by difficulty, but instead the creativity of the challenge. I also won't be including challenges that are made by changing the setting of a game, since that is still how the developer intended for you to play it. Instead, I'll be listing the challenges that are solely formed by playing the game differently. Grand Theft Auto is an entire game about crime. I mean, it's even in the title. And I'm pretty sure if you played any of the games in the series, you've tried to drive normally. Stopping at traffic lights, staying in the right lane, not running over people. Now of course this only really lasts for about 30 seconds before you go back to running everyone and everything over. But some people have taken it upon themselves to play an entire game without doing anything morally wrong. This is usually called the crimeless run or the law-abiding citizen. Since it's actually impossible to beat the game without committing any crimes, as missions will most often put you in a situation where you'll need to shoot your way out, the challenge is to have the lowest numbers in your crime statistics. This counts the amount of times you kill somebody, steal a car, and attain stars. Whilst this is both impressive and interesting, I feel like this would get quite boring after a few missions, which is why it's staying at the number 5 spot. In recent years, the Sonic series has undergone a lot of negative criticism, with the latest installment, Sonic Boom, receiving some of the worst the franchise has ever seen.
It has bounce pads, 2 out of 10.
In conclusion, in its current state, Sonic Boom fails on almost every possible level.
It is absolutely mind-blowing to me that they let such a terrible game be released under the Sonic the Hedgehog brand again.
Oh! Honestly, this pepper is not as bad as the game.
One problem that a lot of players seem to point out was there wasn't much gameplay that involved going fast. There are however some fans that decided to bring this theme over to the other Sonic the Hedgehog games with the No Rings challenge. This involves, you guessed it, avoiding any rings, which is a lot more difficult than it sounds, especially with 2D Sonic games as you can't see what's in front of you. And since you're meant to be traveling fast, it can be very hard to anticipate rings. This causes a lot of players to take their time when attempting this run, since having no rings means that getting hit once will cause you to die. What is this? A metaphorical take on the idea of marriage and life insurance? In most JRPGs, the difficulty isn't really a major concern with a few exceptions. Seriously, screw this guy. When leveling up your characters, they will each receive stat boosts that make them stronger. However, in Final Fantasy X, leveling is dealt with in a different way, where your characters do not directly gain EXP. Instead, they will gain sphere points that when leveled up allow the character to move on a sphere grid. Here they can receive stat improvements by choice, creating a more customizable experience. To make the game more challenging, some players have tried to beat the entire game without using the sphere grid at all. This means that party members do not get stronger with more battles and instead rely on item drops to improve their stats, which is actually quite hard considering there are only 2 equipment slots, 1 weapon and 1 piece of armor. I saw somebody play through Final Fantasy X without the sphere grid and I can say it's not an easy thing to do, since you need to know exactly which items to get from specific monsters in specific places. The reason I find this challenge so intriguing is because I had a bit of trouble in some of the boss fights with stats that are about 10 times bigger than the person I was watching, and they were able to breeze through them like it was nothing, which now that I think about it, says a lot about my ability in turn-based combat. When it comes to The Legend of Zelda, a game mode that has been implemented into more recent titles is Hero Mode, where you can play through the game again but with tougher enemies and less heart drops. Despite this, there have been many fan-made challenges, the most famous one being the Free Heart Challenge, which involves you ignoring all the heart containers and finishing the game with free hearts, which only really becomes a problem in certain boss fights. This is achievable in most Zelda titles, but the challenge I've chosen to be on this list is the No Sword challenge, specific to the original Zelda game. In this challenge, the player has to beat pretty much most of the game without using the sword, which is achievable until the final fight with Ganon. There have been a lot of variations in this challenge with regards to exploring every single room and finding every piece of treasure. Some players have even combined this with the free heart challenge to create an insanely difficult experience. Now you might have already guessed what the number 1 spot is. It's a challenge that has grown quite a lot in popularity over the past few years, especially with YouTubers, and that is the Nuzlocke challenge in the main series Pokemon games. Different players will choose to have variations of the rules, but the two main ones are that if your Pokemon faints, it is considered dead and must be released. And the second rule is that you can only catch the first Pokemon you encounter in a new area. Other rules that you may choose include renaming all of your Pokemon, prohibiting the use of potions, and switching battle mode to set. One of the reasons this challenge is so popular is because everybody has a different story to tell of their experience. You'll lose party members along the way, and it also creates a Fire Emblem style gameplay. This challenge is also great because it gets players to use Pokemon they would never consider in their party, and causes them to be more strategic in battle in order to prevent any casualties. This has received lots of different variations to suit the evolution of Pokemon games, with Mariland's Wedlock, where you pair your Pokemon together as if they were married, and there's also the Wonderlock introduced in X and Y, which pretty much has you wonder trading every Pokemon you catch so that you have a completely random team. I think my favourite version is Dookie Shed's Rocket Lock challenge, where you play with a cheat code activated that allows you to catch Pokemon owned by other trainers, and I recommend you check out Dookie Shed's playthrough of it. Or if you're interested in watching a standard Nuzlocke challenge, then I'd recommend Pro Jared's Fire Red playthrough.